Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. Now I do all things crafty, but on a recent video, I made this tumbler. Now this is a Mother's Day tumbler that I made for my mother-in-law and I sublimated it. Now the image started out without this wide gold band and the words looked a little bit different. So I got the original design off of Creative Fabrica and then I modified it to fit my needs. In the video, I asked if anyone wanted to see how I did that, let me know, and I'd do a short video. So that's what today's video is all about. I'm just going to show you how I took an image from Creative Fabrica and I added this top part to make it my own. Now that I've shown you how the tumbler ended up, I want to show you what I started with. Now I started with this design from Creative Fabrica and I love Creative Fabrica. I used to really stress about what I was going to make. Once I subscribed to it, I just don't have to stress anymore. But once in a while, like today, I want to go ahead and modify this slightly. Now this is a PNG image. You cannot simply click on the word blessed, delete it, and then type what you want. So I had to cover over that. So what I did is I hit download. I downloaded it to my computer, and then I dragged the design to my desktop. Now I fixed it in Inkscape. You could also use Cricut Design Space. So today I'll show you both. First I'll open up Inkscape. And the first thing that I notice in Inkscape is my default template is a 12 by 12 square. You need to have this template match the size of paper that you're going to print on. I go up to File, Document Properties. Now Inkscape has a little bug in it. At least on my computer it doesn't quite work right. When I click on Document Properties, I should see a panel over here with the various size options. The one thing that I have to do is either click over here just outside of Inkscape, or I can just nudge this over. Either one will work. So I'm going to click outside there, and there's the panels that I need. All right, so I want to use 8.5 by 11. So I click on it. As soon as I clicked on it, this changed to the correct size. Now that I have the correct size of paper, I'm just going to drag over my design and just drop it right on top of my canvas. Now, I like to leave these import settings alone. I just use the defaults, so I'll say OK. And it is huge. You can see it's over 29 inches wide by over 25 inches tall. I like to print my tumbler designs at 9.4 inches wide. So I'm going to go ahead and lock the proportions so that when I change this to 9.4, the height will change also. All right, let's go ahead and drag it down where we can see it. Now in the end, everything that I want to print has to be within the borders of this paper. For example, if I printed this now, everything over here would be cut off, and then this little bit here would be cut off. So that's something important to remember. Now typically I print my tumbler designs at 9.4 wide and 8.2 tall. Now I do have to vary that with different tumbler brands. So always measure your tumbler, maybe cut out just a plain paper template to see what size you need. But I like to start with 9.4 by 8.2. For now, I'm going to leave this alone, and that's because when I get done with this image, I thought there was a little too much of the wood down here, and so with my cutter, I just cut that excess off. Most people would go ahead and change the size, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'll unlock this, and then make that 8.2, and now it's the right size for my tumbler. So the next thing I want to do is I want to cover over the word blessed. Again, it is a PNG, and so I can't just get rid of that word. Here's what I decided to do. I went to this Rectangles and Squares tool, click on it, and I just made a rectangle, and I was trying to cover all those letters. So you see the D, I'm going to pull it down to the bottom of that, and then you can see a little bit here. So let me go back to the Select tool, select the rectangle, and then I can just drag it up. All right, that looks pretty good. It's a height of 1.98. Let's just make that an even 2 inches. Now remember, the tumbler design is 9.4, so I'm going to unlock that, and then I'll just make this 9.4. Now, interestingly, it's right even with this, or it's pretty darn close. But to make sure, you can go around your entire design. It's not like Cricut. Just because you touch something doesn't mean it selects it. You have to go all the way around it. And then to make sure they're lined up, I go to Object, Align and Distribute. And then right here, center on the vertical axis, I'll click on that. Okay, so it looks like they already were, but now I know. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and put a yellow rectangle on top of that. I want it to be the same width, but slightly shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command-C for copy after selecting the rectangle, and then Command-V for paste. And then I'm just going to pick a color so I can see what I'm doing. So 9.4 is the right width, but let's go ahead and change this to 1.75. Okay, so remember I said to select everything, you have to go all the way around it. Here is a second way. This is already selected, so I can hold the Shift key down, click on this black rectangle, click on this. Now that everything is selected, I can go ahead and say, center those on the vertical axis. Now notice the yellow is closer to the top than the bottom. So if I just try to drag this, notice how it's jumping around. That's a feature called snapping, and mine defaults to having snapping on. What it does is it tries to snap to places where it thinks you'd like to have it. To get rid of the snapping or to disable it, see how this is gray right now? If I click on it, it's no longer gray. Now I can just drag this very smoothly. All right, so it is selected. I'll hold the Shift key down, add the black to it, add the design to it. Let's center those up again. And then I'm just going to drag around the two rectangles, and then I'll center those in that direction. All right, my letters are still covered, so I'm good. I want to do two more things with these rectangles. First of all, notice how this down here is partially transparent. You can see through it. You can see the texture of the wood through it. I want to do the same thing with my black rectangle. So I'm going to click on my black rectangle, and to decrease the opacity with it selected, you go to Object, Fill and Stroke, and then right here it's at 100%. I just click on it and drag it until I like it. Okay, to me, the opacity of that looks similar to the opacity of the outline around the M, so I'll stay with that. Now the second thing I want to do is pick a good color for this. Now there's various ways to do that. First of all, I could just go down here and I could select a yellow that is shown, or whatever color I want, any color I want. That's one way. This is probably a pretty good color, but I want to show you the other ways. A second way you can pick the color is with the item that you want to change the color of selected. Go to this little dropper tool, click on it, and then you see the little preview box as I move this dropper tool around. Whatever you see in that preview box is the color it'll change to if you click. So I'm going to click right here. See how it turned? I go down here, find a better color. It turned that. I really like that. I could go on to the black. I can pick any color in this image I want. So that's the second way. Now the third way, in the fill and stroke side over here, I can use this little color wheel and I can drag that line around and pick different colors. So let's put it about right there, and I'm going to release it. The reason it looks green is, see this little circle down here? It was way over here. So let's start with it up here. Let me show you that again. Go around. It changes the different colors wherever that black line is on the color wheel. I'm going to go about right there, but let's say I want it a little more yellow, a little lighter. I want more of this gray color in it. You can also drag this around to get different effects. I think I like it about right there, but I want to add a tiny bit more orange to it. So I'm going to drag this ever so slightly, and I'm going to have that be my final color. Now notice this dropper tool is still here. If you then click on here thinking you're not on that dropper tool anymore, look what happens. It turns it a different color. So let's go back. And when you're done with this dropper tool, just go up here and hit the select tool. Now it's time to add a word here. So you could say best mom, or you could say beloved mom. I'm going to stay with blessed mom. So I'm going to click right here on this font tool or the text tool. And then somewhere over here close to where I want it, I'll go ahead and click. And then I'm going to type out the word blessed. Now that's not the font I want. So I can go up here to text and then click on text and font. And then I have my options over here. Now I used Bastion. Let's go ahead and go find that font. When I click on it, I see a preview right here. I like the way it looks, so I'll say apply. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the select tool so that I can select this and resize it. That's way too large. So I can either use my width and height up here, but I'm going to lock the proportions and I'm just going to drag it. Now, to take advantage of that lock feature, you have to pull from a corner. Even if the lock feature is on, if I pull from the top or the side, it doesn't stay proportional. Let's go back. Or proportionate. Not sure what the right word is. So again, I'm going to drag from the corner. Now, once you get more familiar with Inkscape, there's a lot of things you could do with this word. I want to keep this video simple, so I'm just going to leave it like that. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it out so it's a little bit wider. And I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to go ahead and drag around everything. And then hopefully for the last time, go to Object, Align and Distribute. Let's go ahead and line those up. Back to Object and Group. Now my printer is not set to mirror this image and it's going to be sublimation. So now I'd go to Object and flip horizontal. Remember when we started this, I said it had to fit within this piece of paper. It doesn't. Now to rotate this, I could either click on it again so that your little rotate buttons show up, but for me it's more precise to go up here to Object and rotate 90 degrees. Doesn't matter which way you rotate it, it'll turn out fine either way. So that's how I fixed this image in Inkscape. Let's go ahead and try it in Cricut Design Space as well. Now that Cricut Design Space has increased the size of their print and cut, this would be a viable option. So I'm going to open up Cricut Design Space. I'm going to say New Project, and then I'll say Upload, Upload Image. And again, I can either say Browse and find the file, or I can drag it over and drop it. Now it says it's a large file. It might take a moment. That was really quick. I'm going to click on Complex, and then I'll say Continue. And then that looks fine. Let's say Apply and Continue. And of course, we want to print this, so I click on this side and say Upload. Now it's going to take a little bit of time to get into Cricut because it is a little bit of a complex image. Now that it's uploaded, I just click right on it and I say Add to Canvas. Okay, so it came in really large. It didn't come in the same size as it did in Inkscape, but if you use Cricut, you know that's not unusual. And so I'm going to go ahead and change that to 9.4 inches. And then just like last time, and I could have just unlocked this and done it all at one time, but I wanted to see what the height would be. I want to go ahead and change that to my 8.2. Now we're ready to cover over the word blessed. So just like in Inkscape, you go to your shapes, you pick a square, and then I'm going to unlock the square, and I remember that it needs to be 9.4, and we settled on 2 inches in Inkscape. So I'm going to go ahead and stay with 2 inches. I don't really like that color, so I'm going to click right here and try to darken it up a little bit. I think that looks good. That might be a little dark. Let's just go with this. If I wanted to see more colors, I could click on Advanced, and just like in Inkscape, I can find all the different colors. and then I can drag this and get different colors. But again, we're going to go back to that. All right, so I'll click out of it, and we're just going to put that about where it goes. All right, that looks good. So now I need my yellow rectangle. I'll click on it. I'll do Command C for copy, Command V for paste, and then I'm just going to pick this yellow right here. And I actually think that yellow looks good, so I don't need to adjust it or anything. I'm going to go with that. Now in Design Space, we're not going to change this opacity, but it's still going to look great. So if you are much more comfortable with Cricut Design Space and you just don't feel like learning Inkscape or you don't know another design software, that's okay. But I would suggest play around in Inkscape or another design software. I think someday it could come in handy. Okay, so let's go ahead and unlock the proportions, and we'll make this 1.75. And then the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and get these two rectangles centered upon each other. So the yellow one's already selected, you can tell. I'll hold the Command button down, add this one to it, and then I'll go up to Align. I'm going to center horizontally, and then I'm also going to center vertically. Now I can go ahead and group those together by clicking right here, and then I'll hold the Command button down, add the main design to it. We'll go back to Align, and let's center those horizontally. And then lastly, let's just group all those together. Right now, this is a cut file. So see this black over here? It looks like it's just not quite right. But when I flatten this, that's going to look great. And I'll flatten it as soon as I add the word blessed. So I'll click on text. I'm going to go ahead and move that up. And then I'm going to pick a really dark color. I think that looks good. So then let's go ahead and double click on this and type the word blessed. I can pick any font that I want, but I'll go ahead and go with Bastion again. So I click right here on the font, and it's a system font. So I'll click on System, and then I can either look at all the fonts or I can just type one in, click on it, and it changed it. Now I actually want that darker. That works better for me. And we'll click back on it, and the proportions are locked. So I'll just drag this to the right size. And then so it's a little wider, I'll go ahead and unlock it, and then I'll stretch it out. It's already selected, so I'll hold the Command down and add this whole group to it. Then let's go to Align, center horizontally. And then the last thing I need to do is go ahead and say Flatten. Now this looks perfect. So we're ready to print this. To do that, you're going to say Make It. And then right here, it tells you what size of paper you need for this larger image. So to do this, you would have to have larger sublimation paper. You can't print large enough in Cricut on just your 8.5 by 11. You have to make sure it's within those red dots. And then lastly, I would need to mirror this again because it's sublimation. At this point, I'd hit Continue, I'd select my printer, and I would print just like I do always in the Print Then Cut. So I know this was a really simple concept, but hopefully this is helpful to someone. As always, I appreciate you watching, and until my next video, bye-bye.